since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
But before America can organize its forces, there's yet another paralyzing Japanese strike. Within days of the air attack on the Philippines, thousands of Japanese ground forces swarm ashore. With no air power, US defenses are crippled. In a series of swift, ruthless assaults, the Japanese fan out across the country. Ten days later, the Philippine capital, Manila, is captured. For the US commander in the region, it's a humiliation. Douglas MacArthur is one of America's most decorated generals. But outnumbered and outgunned, there's nothing he can do. Finally, in early March, under orders from the American president, MacArthur flies out to Australia. It's an important Allied base in the Pacific. 8 ships have been sunk in the city's port, and a further 10 seriously damaged. 2 airfields have also been shot up, destroying aircraft and oil storage.
5 of the best U.S. Army weapons. Long-range cannon. The Army's Extended Range Cannon Artillery, ERCA, system under development hit a target 43 miles away or 70 kilometers. The Army is racing to extend artillery ranges on the battlefield to take away advantages of high-end adversaries like Russia. The ERCA cannon, when fielded, should be able to fire and take out targets from a position out of the range of enemy systems. The ERCA cannon takes an M109A7 Paladin Integrated Management (PIM) howitzer chassis and replaces the 39 caliber gun tube with a 58 caliber 30-foot one. Combined with Raytheon-made Excalibur munitions and an XM1113 using supercharged propellant, the Army has been able to dramatically boost artillery ranges. In March, the Army inched closer to the ultimate goal of 70 kilometers when it took 2 shots, both reaching 65 kilometers in range. High-energy laser weapon system. The advent of fiber laser technology. The systems have shrunk down to a level where they can fit on ground vehicles, helicopters and ships, platforms that the military actually uses. And the beam quality of fiber lasers, a measure of how much of the laser power actually reaches the target, is excellent. Second is the proliferation of low-cost threats like drones.
el martes un misil balístico no identificado que pasó por encima del territorio japonés. El primer ministro de Japón, Shinzo Abe, describió el lanzamiento como una amenaza grave y sin precedentes, pero dijo que su gobierno garantizará la seguridad de la población. El Pentágono, por su parte, confirmó que Corea del Norte disparó un misil que sobrevoló Japón y que en ningún momento puso en peligro a Estados Unidos. El lanzamiento se produce a solo 3 días de que Pyongyang probara 3 misiles de corto alcance, que tampoco representaron ninguna amenaza según el ejército estadounidense. Las pruebas norcoreanas tuvieron lugar luego de que Estados Unidos y Corea del Sur iniciaran su ejercicio militar anual, unas operaciones que Washington y Seúl aseguran son defensivas, pero que Pyongyang considera una provocación. Los ejercicios de este año se realizan además en un clima de alta tensión, luego
and killing several hundred people. The raid has caused chaos to Allied supply lines. There are fears it may be followed by a Japanese invasion.
My name's Dan Snow and I want to tell you about
5 US war for weeks. It's an important Allied base in the Pacific. 8 ships have been sunk in the city's port. and a further 10 seriously damaged. 2 airfields have also been shot up, destroying aircraft and oil storage tanks and killing several hundred people. The raid has caused chaos to Allied supply lines. There are fears it may be followed by a Japanese invasion. MacArthur is swept up in the defense of the country. The Philippines will have to wait. An isolated and desperate group of Americans are left on the rocky Bataan Peninsula. They dig in and wait for help. Nothing comes. "We are the battling bastards of Bataan," they proclaim bitterly. No Papa, no Mama, no Uncle Sam. Facing repeated Japanese assaults with supplies running out, the US forces are up against impossible odds. After 4 months of savage fighting, 70,000 US troops and their Filipino allies surrender. Up to 10,000 of them will die on the Bataan Death March before they even reach Japanese prisoner of war camps. Throughout early 1942, the US and her allies suffer a series of massive defeats across the Pacific. Japanese troops occupy the British colony of Malaya. They spread out across the country. A month later, they overrun the capital, Kuala Lumpur. Allied forces withdraw to Singapore, the center of British rule in the Pacific. The British believe they've turned the island into an impregnable fortress. But all the guns point south, out to sea. The Japanese are approaching from the north. Britain sends 2 warships to attack Japanese troop convoys. They're met by Japanese bombers. Both ships are sunk in less than 2 hours. Almost 1,000 of their crew are lost. The British defenses in Singapore are soon reduced to chaos. A force of over 90,000 Allied troops surrender. Almost simultaneously, the British garrison in Hong Kong is invaded. It takes the Japanese just 2 weeks to overrun it. Hong Kong is followed by Burma. The country's defenses have been neglected. within 2 months, the Japanese have seized the capital, Rangoon. 8 weeks later, Japan controls the whole country. Across the Pacific, the dominoes are falling. It's time for America and her allies to fight back. The big question, how? As US military planners study maps of Japan and the Pacific Ocean, one thing is crystal clear. Japan is protected by an enormously powerful navy. A seaborne assault so soon after the crippling attack on the US Pacific Fleet in Pearl Harbor would be suicidal. But an airborne attack is equally impossible. The nearest US base had been in the Philippines. Now the closest bases are in sites like the Hawaiian archipelago. These are over 3,000 miles from Japan, hundreds of miles further than the range of any US long-range bomber. Japan seems untouchable. Or is she? For weeks, a hand-picked group of pilots and their aircraft have been undergoing special training at the Eglin Air Base in Florida. The plan is to transport a small force of B-25 Mitchell bombers by aircraft carrier to within 400 miles of Japan. From there, they'll launch a bombing raid on Tokyo. The Mitchell is a compromise. It's neither the longest range nor most powerful US bomber. But it's big enough to carry a significant payload, and crucially, it's small enough to fit on a carrier. Still, it's an operation fraught with danger. Aircraft carriers are not designed to be used by bombers. Their flight decks are too short, and the bombers are too big and heavy. At the Florida Air Base, the Mitchells are stripped down to remove unnecessary weight. They're fitted with extra fuel tanks to increase their range. The pilots are put through an exhaustive and costly training program. Trials show the modified aircraft will just about be able to take off from the carrier deck, provided there are no errors. But there's a bigger problem. The Mitchells may be able to take off from a carrier, but the flight deck is too short for them to return and land. The only hope of getting back safely is to fly on to hastily improvised air bases along the Chinese coast. Even then, the Mitchells will be flying at the very limit of their range, possibly beyond it. It's a potential suicide mission. It needs someone special to command it. The man put in charge is one of America's most celebrated flyers. His name, Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle. a man famous for his skill and daring in the air. He's the first man to fly across the United States in less than 24 hours. He's won trophies for speed and endurance flights. He's the first man to take off, fly, and land an aircraft using only instruments to guide him. But this will be Jimmy Doolittle's most challenging and dangerous mission yet. Four months after the devastating attack at Pearl Harbor, America is finally ready to strike back. The USS Hornet sets sail from San Francisco with 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers strapped to her deck. They're too big to be stored below. "12 days later, halfway across the Pacific, they link up with a second US carrier, the Enterprise, and an escort of cruisers and destroyers. On April the 17th, there's a small ceremony aboard Hornet. Japanese medals, donated to US servicemen during a state visit to Japan in 1908, are ceremonially strapped to one of the huge 500-pound bombs. The bombs are also daubed with slogans